Hello everyone, welcome to week 8. This week we are exploring delivery. So you're reading in the book, dealing with different methods of delivery, language usage, all that kind of cool stuff. But what I want to do is I want to sort of supplement what is going on in your reading this week with how do you actually do this thing called delivery. So what I want to do is I just want to take a few minutes and explore how this can actually be done and really what goes into good delivery. Okay, so now we can collectively groan. I usually bring up the collective groan whenever I say these certain things, but sorry, my phone just went off and I thought I had it off. But when we're talking about delivery, wow, did you see my face light up? This screen is super bright. When we're talking about delivery, the ways you deal with good delivery in public discourse is ethos and pathos, or ethos and pathos, okay, depending on how you want to say it. This is what makes good delivery, okay? You have to have logos, all right? You have to have good logic. You have to have good use of language. We've been talking about that a little bit, but what we're going to do today is we're going to show how ethos and pathos are the ways that we can really have good delivery in our speeches. Okay, so let's dive in with ethos first. Okay, so what makes good delivery? Well, let's dive in. I think I've said dive in 13 times. I'm sleepy as usual, so we'll see how many times I can say dive in today. Okay, we'll make it a. I hope you're not drinking when you're watching this, but I was like, we'll make it a drinking game, but don't do that. So we're talking about Aristotle. Okay, now he is talking about ethos being with ethics, okay? But it's deeper, okay? So, ethics comes from the Greek word ethos, meaning character and credibility, okay? So, the first point that I want to make for you today is that good delivery comes from you communicating good character. And we'll talk about that. He breaks this down, okay? You communicating your good character and your credibility. All right. Now, this is also one of the reasons why you have to have good information. You have to have good sources. It has to make sense logically. If the thing that you are saying or arguing doesn't make sense logically, it hurts your credibility. It hurts your character. And so if you really want to have good delivery, you're going to have to make sure you're credible and that you're clearly communicating your character. Okay? Now, here is the rub to what I just said, okay? And it's this. Credibility is in the eyes of the audience. And this is why delivery is so important. You have to have good delivery so that your credibility is seen. I can have done 100 hours of research on a presentation. I can have the sources from the best minds on earth. I can have put it together so logically that it is airtight. The argument is airtight. But if I am not able to clearly communicate that or credibly communicate that with good delivery, with good nonverbals, the credibility that I have disappears because credibility is in the eyes of the audience. It sadly, it matters, okay? It matters that I do the work prior. It matters that I do the research. It matters that I put it all together. But it will all be for naught if I am not able to have good delivery when it comes time to stand in front of the audience, because credibility is absolutely in the eyes of the audience. And if I say, I did all this research, but I am not clearly communicating that, it's not gonna matter like it ought to, okay? So folks, this is extremely important. Good delivery is not just important to make a speech go well. Good delivery is important because it is linked to your credibility, okay? So what makes me credible? What makes me have this good character, okay? Well, here we go. Aristotle says that you have to have 3 things, and these 3 things are really important, okay? Competence, good moral character, and goodwill, okay? So we're going to unpack these for just a few minutes here, all right? We're going to talk about competence, good moral character, and goodwill, all right? So let's talk about it. competence, adequacy, possession of a required skill, knowledge, qualification, or capacity. And whether you like it or not, your audience assesses your competence. Your audience assesses your competence as someone who knows the material and who knows what they're talking about in whatever situation you're in. Okay? And so now, can competence look different in different situations? Yes, absolutely. There are some audiences where if you use a single curse word, you have completely proven yourself to be incompetent, okay? There are other audiences where if you don't use a curse word, they're going to see you as someone as incompetent. So you have to be very careful about what counts as competence, but generally speaking, we're going to break this down, okay? So for you to come across as someone who is competent in front of an audience, yes, you have to prepare, okay? You have to have all of the background stuff. You got to have the good logic. You have to know. One of the things you're going to read this week in your book is how important using words correctly is. Absolutely. If I stand here the whole time and the example in the book is really great. In your book, it talks about the example of a student using criminal persecution instead of criminal prosecution. Oh my goodness, those are two very different things. And even if that student did really good research, even if that student has really great sources, the difference between persecution and prosecution are drastic, and you are undermining your competence using wrong words. Okay? So, this idea of competence is linked to your language usage. You have to make sure that you're using the right language appropriately, okay? And you have to make sure that you're communicating non-verbally that you're competent. So how do I do this? Okay, dynamism is one of the things that Aristotle talks about. You have to have good energy and good charisma. Now, I'm not talking about cheesy charisma. Hey, I'm a charismatic person. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the truth of your character being competently communicated in the way that you are delivering a presentation. I'm not talking about something fake. Now, sometimes when we are in front of an audience, we have to turn ourselves up to 11, is how I describe it. You're not being fake if you do that. You're not being fake if you're like, wow, I need to be a little more dynamic in front of this audience. I need to have a little more energy. I'm actually, me myself, I'm a laid back person. I'm pretty low key most of the time. Put me in front of a classroom and I turn that up a little bit. I'm not putting on something fake. I'm just turning up the things that are real, okay? So energy and charisma feed your perceived competence. Your audience looks for these things. Your audience is looking for your energy, is looking for your charisma, okay? Along with proper language use, this is where smooth, confident delivery comes in. This is where you knowing what to say and when to say it is extremely important. This is one of the reasons why getting rid of your vocal fillers is so important, okay? Too many vocal fillers, and by vocal fillers, to be clear, I mean ums, ahs, uhs, stuff like that. It hurts how the audience perceives your competence, and it hurts your ethos. So whenever we're talking about smoothing out our delivery and taking away vocal fillers, it's not because vocal fillers are inherently evil or anything like that. They just hurt your perceived competence. There have been some really interesting studies done, and you can probably guess what happens, but can you guess? What happens as the number of vocal fillers goes up to the perceived competence of the person? Perceived competence goes down. It's pretty logical. This happens in job interviews. This happens in public discourse. This happens in classrooms. Now, the key here, though, is too many vocal fillers. Having a few vocal fillers isn't a big deal. In fact, it makes you human. If you have 0 vocal fillers, you are a newscaster reading from a teleprompter, okay? And your audience wants you to be natural, and they want you to be authentic while also being competent and having not a lot of vocal fillers, okay? So you have to figure out the balance between the professional, polished version and the the you not professional, you not polished, okay? You have to sort of find the right balance for the right context to fully communicate your competence, okay? So this is why practice is so important. This is why knowing your speech is so important. This is why eye contact is so important. This is why knowing how to shift your tone and volume and pacing whenever you're in front of an audience, so that you're communicating that deep-seated competence in what you're talking about. Okay? So next, you got to have competence, and it's absolutely linked to your delivery. The same thing as it's not the same thing, but similarly linked to your delivery is good moral character. Good moral character is perceived trustworthiness. Your audience is not just assessing your competence, they are going to take your competence, their perception of it, and they're going to then link that to whether or not you are trustworthy as a person who is delivering this stuff, okay? So even if you did the research, even if you have good sources, even if it's logical, if you are not using good delivery, they are going to rate your competence as low, and then your good moral character is going to be rated lower as well. I'm not going to trust you. If you're that student who says criminal persecution instead of criminal prosecution, they're going to be like, if you don't know the word for prosecution, how can you really understand anything else that you're discussing right now, okay? And it's one thing to have a couple of vocal fillers. It's one thing to have a couple of flubs here and there. It's one thing to kind of get your tongue twisted and have to correct it. That happens to all of us, okay? It's happened to me in this screencast. But the competence and the trustworthiness have to be there. The expertise, the professionalism, the fluency, the confidence has to be there, okay? So there's a lot at stake with delivery. It's not just entertainment, right? Yes, there is entertainment value to your delivery. Absolutely, okay? But you have to have competence and good moral character, and to throw some more on top of that, goodwill. Your audience wants to believe that you have their best interest in mind, that you are not just up there speaking for you. And I know that in this class, you're being forced to speak in front of an audience. I mean, that's how it goes. But the audience has to sense goodwill from you. If they don't sense goodwill from you, it's going to hurt your ethos, okay? Now, this one is really interesting because you can have good, competent, dynamic, charismatic, very few vocal filler delivery, okay? You can be trustworthy, but your audience might not sense that you have their best interest in mind. This person is just talking to hear their own voice. This person is actually out to manipulate us. And so you have to make sure you're communicating through your delivery, through your nonverbals, that you have the audience's best interest in mind. Okay? So you've probably never looked at delivery like this, but this is what your delivery does. These three things are why delivery is so important. The next one is pathos, of course, but if you can have great delivery, and you can even have a ton of pathos in your delivery, and if you're not coming across as someone who's trustworthy or has the audience's best interest in mind, then you're just great delivery, and the audience senses you don't have goodwill. You're a sleazy salesperson, or you're someone who's just trying to manipulate or get your own way, and that's not what you're about. Okay, so this is the first piece of good delivery, is ethos. Competence, good moral character, and goodwill, and it all has to be communicated in the delivery of your speech. Next screencast, we're going to talk about pathos. I'll see you there.